Let's talk about panic. Panic's a big one. What you don't want to do in the midst of panic is fight the physiology. That seems counterintuitive because panic is a lot of physiology all trying to surge at the same time. So let's talk a little bit more about this. Panic. What is this? We hear panic, we hear anxiety attack. What's the difference? What's the similarities? A panic attack is going to be very acute. Comes on very quickly, comes on out of the blue. An anxiety attack is going to be something that is progressive. We build to an anxiety attack, and you can track that pretty clearly. For a panic attack, oftentimes there's no clear trigger, like I said, can come out of the blue. And with an anxiety attack, usually there's kind of a final straw or final thought. Panic attack is going to be very time limited to get to its peak, whereas an anxiety attack can feel like it drags on. Also, panic is going to include very specific experiences. Really loud thoughts of, I'm choking, I can't breathe, I must be dying, this must be a heart attack, those types of thoughts. Afterwards, there's also a lot of worry about a subsequent attack. What if this happens again? Where is this going to happen again? So these are some of those differences, panic versus anxiety. Let's talk specifically panic. There's parts of a picture with panic. 3 different stages, or 3 different parts to be exact. There's a pre-attack, during, and then a post-attack. A pre-attack, even though I said this comes out of the blue, there is typically some building stress or anxiety. The only thing is that this is fairly subtle. It's happening in various ways, in little ways, and not necessarily from one clear instigating event. So we don't even notice. It's like slowly turning up the heat on the stove, and the water only slowly starts to come to a boil, but then it does. During an attack, there's an acute rush of symptoms. And then the post-attack, there's this moment where those symptoms almost break or start to fall off. And this is where you really want to look at either recovery or a persistence of those symptoms. So there's certain tools that work best in each stage. And many people know the tools, but they employ them in the incorrect stages where they are less effective, which means panic is more likely to recur. So which tools when? Okay, before we get to those tools, let's think of an image, a model here for what panic is. So I want you to think of the surf. Whether that's being at the coast, actually out in the surf, or in a wave pool. Okay, but I want you to think about some of the waves are too small to move you, right? They kind of lap at your feet, or they lap at your shins or against your body, but nothing else really is happening. And then occasionally there's a wave that is bigger. It picks you up. And this is where most of us have that little kicky thing that our feet do. It's picked us up off the ground, and we're searching to keep ourselves upright or to reclaim the ground. It's a little bit anxiety provoking. Once that wave has you, to a certain extent, you're along for the ride. Right? You can't force the wave away. So while you're riding it, you're there until it breaks and sets you down or passes you by, and you come back down to rest. But the wave passes and you do come back down. This is how we want to think of panic. The small waves are day-to-day stressors, experiences that we meet and respond to effectively. They're not really doing much to us, but they do have an impact. The bigger wave that picks us up, that's the panic attack. We're in its clutches. And we have to wait for that moment where the wave breaks for us to fully come out of panic. This is that, oh, thank goodness moment that happens. at the very end of a panic attack. That face of the wave then is your recovery slope. You want a nice, sharp recovery slope to reduce the potential for further panic. So back to that, which tools when? Before an attack, this is where you want to be engaging in your regular self-care. This is proactive self-care, and you're already doing a lot of this stuff. Relaxation, maybe that's breathing practices, muscle relaxation, stretching, mindfulness, workout routines, time with friends, little things that we do all through the day. This is preparation, tools and strategies, plans and coordination that we put together in anticipating more challenging circumstances. This is communication, whether self or other directed, little encouragements that we provide ourselves with, messages that we send out to others when we're in need or we have questions. Goal setting, with a focus on effective behaviors that are going to take us one step at a time in a particular direction towards a particular goal, but not necessarily perfect, just effective. And then weighing evidence. This is a particular term. Weighing evidence is a way that we challenge our own thinking, because sometimes we have certain thoughts that are less than helpful or more rigid than flexible. And so weighing evidence is a way to challenge those. During an attack. During an attack, you do not want to try to control your physiology, the physical symptoms. During this time, your body has a particular process that's going on, the human stress response. It's very active during this time. And even though you'll hear messages of just breathe, just focus on your breathing, slow your breathing, just breathe deep, just relax. These messages, I chuckle because we hear them quite frequently in this space. And if we try to follow suit, our body fights us, and it can make it worse. So let's talk about that human stress response. What is it doing to us? The human stress response is developed to engage under conditions of real or perceived stress. This is kind of like your fight, flight, freeze, faint, that type of response process. What's the goal of this process overall? Mobilize, survive, and return to our baseline. It is a fast system. It goes into action often before our visual centers have even processed the moment. It is that fast. This is how we hear a horn blow and jump out of the way of a car before we've even registered what's gone on. Okay. Stress hormone production increases to impact the body in very specific ways during this time period. And these stress hormones, I want you to think of them as Olympic sprinters. If you watch the Olympics, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Very fast, very muscular legs. These sprinters are moving quick. Cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine, these guys. When we need to exert ourselves, our heart rate goes up, right? We need to feed those big muscles that are going to push us down the track with those sprinters, right? If the blood is moving faster, that means we have to oxygenate it faster. So our breathing rate starts to pick up to oxygenate that blood. Our muscle tone increases because we're pushing blood through faster and we're getting ready to take action. We can't be loose and relaxed. And our blood vessels actually constrict. They get small to make sure the blood is going to the biggest, most important parts of our body. But because we have small vessels in our hands and fingers and feet and toes, we get that numb, tingly, shaky sensation. And that's simply because our body is doing its job. The impact of this system, before it gets to that highest peak of the wave, that crest of the wave, 5 to 15 minutes before you get there. It happens very, very fast. If we're not supposed to fight these Olympic sprinters, if we're not supposed to fight this physiology, what is it that we should do? Familiarity, time limited, safety, and communication. This is where you want to be. Familiarity. I know what this is. And not just in the sense of this has happened before, all the information that we just ran through about the human stress response. I know what's going on in my body. This is my body responding to a sense of threat. Stress hormones are surging through my body. I'm gonna feel my heart rate go up. I'm gonna feel my breathing rate increase. I'm gonna feel my muscle tone increase. I'm gonna start to feel restless, like I need to move. That's the familiarity piece. Bring that to mind. This is time limited, 5 to 15 minutes, and I'm gonna be at that peak. Oftentimes it happens much faster than this, and some of you will know exactly what I'm talking about. Right? That place where you get to the thank goodness moment, right? But I know this has an end. Safety. I know how to keep myself safe. What do I mean by that? Sometimes we feel lightheaded, faint, like we're gonna pass out. I can sit down. If I pass out from a seated position, it's a small bump, and then I wake up and the panic attack has stopped. If I'm getting hooked in some of those thoughts about choking, not being able to breathe, I can invite people over to help me intervene. But I know how to keep myself safe. Communication. We've already started to tap on this with the safety one, but a lot of times people rely on their voice. We do it quite often. All throughout our lives, we're talking about many different things. But in the context of a panic attack, our vocal cords are run by muscles. If our muscle tone is up, our vocal cords are tight. Our voice tone goes up, or it seems to catch in our throat. We don't want to rely on verbal communication. We can wave for assistance. We can call people over. We can ask for space. We can tell people that we're okay. The one that I particularly like here with communication, because we have individuals who want to be very helpful, so they get very close and they tell us when we're in the midst of a panic attack, just relax. And the one I like there is, whoa, I'm okay. Are you okay? And it's a great shift that you'll see on their face, and it will help you start to shift gears in your own mind. Try that one out. Familiarity, time limited, safety, and communication. You practice these things. Maybe you go through it once, maybe you go through it 10 times, but you practice these until that wave breaks and you get that thank goodness moment. Once that happens, the thank goodness moment, the break in the wave, this is where you focus on physiological recovery. Your body goes first. Breathing happens here. Remember, we want a really sharp face of that wave for recovery. You really want to hone in on your breathing. Controlled, diaphragmatic breathing. Lots of big words in there. You probably have heard triangle breathing or four square breathing or square breathing. These are all different formats. The goal of these breathing formats is to create a rate of 4 to 6 breaths per minute. And you want to try to engage this for about 1 to 2 minutes at a time, and then let go of it, and then come back in 1 to 2 minutes at a time. Diaphragmatic means you're down here in your belly. When you think about exertion, right? My breath is up here in my chest. That's a signal that I still need more juice. Don't want to send that signal. Be down here in your belly. This is our relaxed breathe. And when you start to add the triangle breathing or the four square breathing, I'll leave it to you to look those things up. They are readily available. That's where we start to induce a relaxation response in the body. Our lungs are big. The rest of our body is going to tune in. It's going to listen. You just got to give it the signal after the thank goodness moment. After we're kind of attending to breathing, our muscle tone. Those sprinters, they get going, they really build us up, and then we have all this energy. We feel restless, we feel itchy, we feel like we gotta move. So move. Progressive muscle relaxation. This is another tool. It's one that you can readily search and find a lot of different scripts for. It's a systematic contraction, hold, and release of muscle groups. The idea with this is you contract for about 8 to 10 seconds at a time, not to the point of pain. You're not trying to crush rocks in your hand. You just want to feel building pressure. But after that 8 to 10 seconds, you release and you will feel a draining or a deflating sensation from that muscle group. And we can replicate this time and time again. It's a great way to burn off that energy. If you don't have a space for that structured of movement in general is very, very helpful. A lot of us, when we start to feel anxious leading up to, or even in the midst of a panic attack, we start to pace, we start to move. And that's us searching for an outlet for all of that energy. Let it out. Go for a walk, walk in place, do some jumping jacks even. It sounds silly, but it will burn off all of that energy that you just built up. The last thing in here for this recovery is to diffuse, and I mean that in the sense of like you're diffusing a bomb, right? Diffuse unhelpful thinking. Some of you might already have some experience with this. Some of you might ask for a little bit of help. You can certainly seek it out, weighing evidence, self-commendation, self-reassurance. These are all different ways to diffuse unhelpful thinking. But if our head tells us, this is bad, this is going to happen again, these are statements that we want to attend to. If we let them ride, the message coming in is there's a threat coming back. Right. Some examples there. This is going to happen again. Some of you have had many panic attacks, so it might seem hard to push back against that. You don't want to flip it on its head. You don't want to try to convince yourself that it will never happen again now that I have these tools on board. It can, and it might. What you do want to tell yourself again is, I don't have to be as worried about this should it happen again. I know how to handle this such that it is less of a problem. And the beauty of this is it starts to show up less because it's not as big of a threat anymore. There are certainly a lot of additional tools. This is just kind of an introduction. Search out some of the terms that I've referenced here today. Practice some of these tools, especially for during an attack. Really think about those terms: familiarity, time limited, safety, and communication. And after that wave breaks, then attend to your body. All right. Thanks for joining me today and talking about some panic.